What's up? How you doing? Here we are, late Friday night. Just got back from the movies. We saw a movie called Talk to Me. Interesting movie, very weird, but I like a touch of horror, so it was enjoyable, and can't wait for the sequel. So, right now it's a little bit chilly. Not chilly, but slightly cool, and we're gonna make some tea. Make some tea here. So we'll turn this on. Alright, so feel the heat. We have a hurricane heading this way. We should be here Sunday. We're going to get a lot of rain, a lot of wind. We'll see what happens. I know when it gets windy out here, the palm trees, they go side to side to side, and at some point I'm looking at them and I'm thinking they're going to snap. But they never do. I don't know. When I was a kid, there was a hurricane that was coming, and that night before the hurricane arrived, my father and I visited my grandparents. And on that night, my cousin was my cousin was already there. So we went upstairs and she was there and we were talking about the hurricane. We were both excited. By the time we left, we went downstairs to get into the vehicle. It was getting a little bit breezy. So I went home. I was a little kid back then. I went home. In those days we had a tree in the front where the sidewalk is, kind of like at the corner of our house. There was a big tree. I think it was maple. Well, the hurricane hit, and I woke up the next morning and I went downstairs and the tree had fallen down on its side. And it took about a week or so before they came there with chainsaws and chopped it up into pieces. Somebody out there. Anyway, so they chopped it up, they took it away, and then instead of putting cement or cement, they put asphalt. And it remained that way until 1986. And in 1986 they redid the sidewalks in my neighborhood, and they redid that one with concrete. So, and I prefer concrete for sidewalks. And my sidewalk, my father one time was rebuilding one of the little walls with concrete, and I think I was around 10 years old. So I took a big nail, the head of the nail, and a hammer, and I banged it into the concrete and carved my initial, my first name, N78. And I could see it for many, many years. It was there for, a few decades. And then it just faded away. Just the sidewalk started to wear out a little bit at a time. Get that. Yeah, I'm very happy with this hot plate. It heats things up instantly. So we're going to take a little bit of tea. This stuff tastes delicious. It smells great. Gonna put a little bit in here. A little bit goes a long way when it comes to tea because it expands. You think that you look at it, you go, that's not enough, and then you add water and it bulks up. All right. Put it off here on the side. I'll save it. You never know. I might want second cup. A little bit steamy here. Yeah. So when hurricanes would hit, especially at nighttime, I would go to bed and I would leave my windows open. And then in the middle of the night, thunder and lightning and all that crazy stuff would happen. And the curtains would be flying around in my room. That's what I enjoy. Windows opened at night, no matter how cold it is. I spent my whole life sleeping and with open windows in the winter. I always had windows open. My mother in the morning would be like, "Why is the house so cold?" I don't know. So, funny story, many years ago, it was New Year's Eve, we rented a hotel room, and so I had my bed, and then I had a couple of cousins that were in there too, and I just could not sleep with windows shut. It's like really difficult for me. So I got up, and I think that night it was single digits. Freezing out. So I got up, and it was like a balcony, and I opened up the doors and I went to sleep. I felt like, very comfortable. And I look over, and my cousins were wrapped up like mummies in their blankets. One of them didn't say anything about it, but the other one that got up, I could hear him, like, "Why is it so cold in here? Who opened up the doors?" I opened them up. I just that's the way I like the air to be cold and the body to be warm with a blanket. I'm not into being warm and breathing warm air in. I want circulation in the room. So yeah, and when I was a kid, I would leave the windows open when we had those summer storms, thunder and lightning, and those were powerful. It sounded like missiles dropping. You'd wake up and it was like boom, boom, boom. It was crazy. But we have Hurricane Hilary. We'll see what happens. All right. Got a spoon somewhere here to stir it up. Beautiful night, but it's cooled down though. Right now it's calm, but in 48 hours it's gonna change. You know what I like? Nighttime, have a little campfire, cook peppers, couple of steaks, chicken drumsticks, and have it going nice and slow. That the wood, crunching up, making that crunchy sound. Nice. Like when you're a kid, you go out camping. Not camping, but you go out and you're in the forest, you get a fire going, and then you have like all these people that have stories of a life, and they start telling these interesting stories by the fire. Wow, this tea is amazing. Amazing tea. So anyway, that's what happened tonight. Went to the movies and saw that Talk to Me. I recommend it. Very interesting, very gruesome. Has a few scenes in there where, you know, especially nowadays with the CGI, they look so realistic that you think you're watching something off the news. You know what's creepy? At nighttime, when there's no moon out, it's pitch black, and you go to the ocean next to a mountain and the waves are just crashing. You know, these big massive waves are just crashing and you're just walking. Can't see the waves, but you can hear them. It's like the ocean's trying to reach for you and pull you in. A few years ago, I lost my wedding ring. Up past Malibu, there's these sand dunes that go up the mountainside, and I was up there running around, you know, and so I said to myself, I better take my ring off so I don't damage it, grabbing rocks, you know, it was rock climbing and all that up at the top. So I took it and I put it in my pocket, and then I ran around like a, you know, a nut, and I did that for a while, a couple of hours. And then I said, okay, time to go. I'm driving on the road halfway home, and I feel my finger and the wedding ring, it's not there. And I said, oh, I put it, and then I felt here and it wasn't there. So I said, uh-oh, I must have lost it. So I had a plan. Get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and drive back to that location without telling anybody, you know, unnecessary. So I was lucky because I own a metal detector. So I took the metal detector, I got up at like 3, threw it in the car, and headed out to this area up at Malibu by the mountains. And when I got there, it was dark. You couldn't see a damn thing, and it was creepy. I was the only car. The ocean's on one side and the mountains on the other. I had a flashlight with me, but you couldn't see anything, and I was the only car parked there. So, you know, so I'm walking up the sand, and I mean, you put your hand here, my hand here, and I wouldn't be able to see it. That's how dark it was that night. So I finally get to the top, where I think I lost the ring, and I get the metal detector going, and I'm going back and forth, and I could hear beeps, but every time I would put my hand in the sand, I would pull out bottle caps. And I did this for a couple of hours, back and forth, back and forth. So let's see what's going on there. So finally the sun started to appear and give a little bit of light, and I went back and forth, and I was starting to get, you know, kind of feeling that it's hopeless. And my metal detector rang, and I put my hand in the sand, and instead of pulling out bottle caps, I pulled out my wedding ring, and I found it. So I was very happy about that. And then after, when I found it, I mentioned what happened. But if not for the metal detector, I never would have found it. I mean, if you see this place, it's a good area. It's a big area, and you know, how are you gonna find it? I'd have to get on my hands and knees and kind of shuffle the sand. And what happens is when you shuffle the sand, you end up mixing it even more. So the moral of the story is, always have a metal detector handy. You always need something like that. I used to bury my keys in the sand when I would go at the beach, you know, the car keys. I'd bury them so nobody would, find them and take them on me when I was in the water. So one time I buried them by my towel, because that's kind of like the area I would bury it. And when I went back, it was time to leave. I couldn't find the keys. They were buried, but I looked and looked, and I was digging away. I couldn't find them. Finally, after doing that for a bit, put the hand in and pulled out the keys. Perfect tea. And perfect temperature right now. Delicious. Yeah, so, just kicking back here, enjoying the night. But I really wish I had a grill right here with charcoal, wood charcoal, the kind that they use at professional restaurants. And see the lights over there. Yeah, I'd get a fire going. With steak. Could go for a good steak. Nice tender steak. Prime cut. Get some onions roasting on there. Peppers. Nice hot peppers. When I was a kid, I would go down to the Italian part of town, and they would have these guys there on the grill. They would have sausages, Italian sausages, and they were very, very tasty. And then on one side they had grilled onions, on the other side they had the peppers, and they had these like hot dog bun breads, and then they were like $2 back then. And they'd say, "What do you want?" And I'd say, "Everything." Put everything on there. And they'd put everything on there, and then I'd eat it in the wintertime. The thing would be steaming. Right now I could go for one. Also, I'm a fan of olives. I love olives. Get some nice olives and some sourdough bread. But I find olives taste great at the beginning, but when you pass a certain point, like maybe you've had a couple of hundred, then they start losing that attractive flavor they have at the beginning. I don't know, I think your tongue gets oversaturated with whatever that flavor is, and it doesn't want it anymore. So it makes you think that they're not tasting that great anymore. And I got lucky with this tea. Sometimes you buy tea, it's okay, but this one is exceptional. Fascinated with monks. Why? Because I was a big fan of the Shaolin Temple on this series Kung Fu that came out in the early 70s. Kind of creepy, by themselves, silent, walking around the granite building with their sheets. Always found that kind of like very mysterious. Go in there, hang around with them, eat vegetables all day, let the cockroaches live. Yeah, I was a fan of that show, Kung Fu, the original, not the Kung Foolish one that came after. Like Master Po. Master Po had the same eyes as the Incredible Hulk. But it was such a good show. Everything about it, the atmosphere, that also gave me a feeling inside. You had this small, thin guy, Kane, but he knew all these techniques, and he could beat everybody up, no matter how big the guy was, no matter how skilled. Kane was able to win the fight. And then they had the lessons, you know, with all these cool sayings from the Tao. I like places like that, you know. They have words to live by, and then they put them in a book. But it was so clever. I mean, the advice they would give him on the flashbacks. And I was always wondering, when he was having those flashbacks, was he just dazed? People were looking at him saying, what's wrong with him? Do the hand like this in front of his face. You know, because those were long flashbacks. I mean, he was just like, and he was just thinking, constantly thinking of the past. Yeah, I loved Kung Fu. Fascinating. Now we know that kind of fighting is not real. It's just not, you know, but it was cool. And that came around at the time the $6 Million Man was on. And I think it predated $6 Million Man, because that's where they got the idea, slow motion, from the Kung Fu series. They had him fighting in slow motion, giving the impression that he was so fast that they had to slow it down. Meantime, he didn't know Kung Fu at all. And then $6 Million Man, I guess in those days, if they sped him up, then he'd have to run like for miles in order to get a short clip. So instead, they did the opposite. They had him run a short distance and then slow it down. I was always fascinated with the fact that Oscar Goldman was not bionic, but when Steve Austin was running somewhere for a while, at the end of the show, you know, get the bad guys, Oscar Goldman would catch up to him. In a matter of like 15 seconds, he would be there too. So, but yeah, but Kung Fu series was just, for me, another great show, especially when you're younger. You know, I see it now and it doesn't have the same impact on me. But when I was a kid, you know, I used to listen to all the words from Master Po and Master Khan. And then that pebble thing, you snatch the pebble from my hand, then you can leave. A couple of things on that. First of all, the first time he does it, Kane is a child. So when he finally grabs that pebble out of his hand, 20 plus years have passed. You don't expect Master Khan to have the same speed, so the test is not the same. And plus, Kane now is in his prime. Looks like he's about 25, 30 years old. Of course he's going to be faster than an 80-year-old man. So, anyway, that, and what was the other thing? Oh, the other thing is that if I were Kane, knowing that the weather, because you see when he finally graduates the Shaolin Academy, he leaves, but they don't even give him a pair of boots. They toss him out up on the mountain there, where it looks like, I don't know, a blizzard had just hit, and he goes out there and he's got the tattoos now, the burn marks. He puts them into the snow, but he's barefoot with sheets. I mean, do they want to allow him to survive, or do they want him to die on the way out? I mean, in reality, he would have died probably like 5 hours later. Would have froze to death. You know, if you see the scene, there's a mountain in the background, and he's on another mountain. So how's he going to find his way down to get slippers? Just ridiculous. They go, okay, you can go now. You know, good luck surviving. You should have waited springtime. Give him a nice backpack, you know, a few sandwiches in there, a couple of beverages, and say, okay, you graduated, you can go now. And why is it that his reflexes catching the pebble is a sign that he should leave? Too quick for them? I mean, I would have been like, I can't grab it. Oh, you got me again. Looking outside, it's snowing. I'm not going to graduate then. I'm going to wait springtime. So, Well, every show has something ridiculous, you know, and that show had ridiculous things. Always searching for his half brother. Finally found him. I like when they have these wanted posters because he killed the emperor's nephew, or the emperor, I don't know, one or the other. It was a little kid. What kind of emperor that was. But immediately the Chinese authorities, they drew a cartoon picture of him and sent that poster to the United States that he was wanted. Was $1,000 reward or $10,000. But it was like a cartoon picture of Kwai Chang Caine. And I don't know, I mean, who would recognize him? You know, I mean, say, I don't know if that's him. But they would all, you know, recognize him. Oh, that's him, that's the guy. He's wanted. And, except for the money, which, could you trust China to give you the money back then? I don't know. But most people would have been like, I'm not getting involved with that. You know? But yeah, that was a cool series. I like the fight scenes. Made it look like he really knew how to fight. But the thing I really enjoyed was the philosophy. The lessons to live your life by. There's a place, I think it's in San Pedro, where Master Khan, Philip Ahn, his father brought back a bell from South Korea, and that bell right now is in San Pedro. I've been there, and it has his name. He brought it. I think, I don't know if he's died since the last time I checked. I may have to check again. But Philip Ahn's brother, who was a bit younger than him, was still alive up until recently. He may still be alive, I'm not sure. But always wanted to meet him. Wanted to tell him, hey, you know, that show your brother was on, loved it. Let me see, I forget his name. Let me see what I'll find here. I think he died. Ralph. Yeah, he just recently, like a year and a half ago. I wish I had met him. Ralph Ahn. Born September 28th, 1926 in Los Angeles. And he died in February 26th in 2022 in Los Angeles. Or as they used to say in the old days, Los Angeles. Los Angeles. So his father, so his father was like a Korean independence activist and a leader of the Korean American immigration community in the United States. Dosan. But yeah, I believe that he brought that bell here. Let me see. Yeah, I wish I met him. He died at the age of 95. So the brother died a long time ago. So the brother was a lot older. He was born in 1905, and he died in 1978. Look at that. That's a good looking picture. And let me see here. Let's see, he's got a sister. Is she still alive? Ah, she died. Wow, she lived 100 years. 1915 to 2015. Says was the first female gunnery officer in the United States Navy. Wow. 100 years old. Yeah, I was a big fan of Philip Ahn. I loved everything about it. I loved the voice. I loved his style. And he's in the pilot episode where Kwai Chang Caine sits at the table with the other boys that they finally invite in from the rain and the waiting around and all that. They finally picked, I think, 4 boys. He was one of them. Said, "Come on in, sit down over here." And they poured tea. And they poured tea for Master Khan, played by Philip Ahn. And the other boys, they were thirsty, so they grabbed the tea and they started to drink. But Kwai Chang Caine waited. And he waited until the master had his sip first. So the other boys were dismissed. Master Khan kind of looked at the other guys like, I don't like that. They drank before me. So he says to them, "You may go." And Kwai Chang Caine went to get up to leave as well. And they said, "No, you may stay." And then they asked him, "Why did you not drink your tea?" And he said, "After you, most honorable one." And then they said to him, "Where'd you learn your manners?" And he said his grandfather taught him. So he got to stay based on that technicality there. But I would have been like, you know what? We've been out there now for like a month waiting for you guys to invite us in here. We are dehydrated. We are hungry. And you're concerned about manners at this point. We wanted some fluid to get into our belly so we didn't die from dehydration. But anyway, they told him, "You may go. You can go. Please." Oh, no, please go home. That's what he said. Please go home. Kind of rude, too. Please go home. Where are they going to go home there? I think they're orphans. That's why they came to you. They don't have a home. But yeah, they start the scenes off where every once in a while a monk would go out and he would kind of like send people home if he saw something he didn't like. So one scene, the little boys are playing, I don't know, jacks or something, they're playing, and he sees them and he says to them, "You go home." Then he goes out and some of them are hiding underneath some shelter because it's raining. While while Caine is sitting out there just getting wet like this. And then he sees those and he says, "Oh, you can go." And then he finally at the end invites the other ones in. But they took a sip. And I wonder, did they really have 4 slots that were open? Or was there only 1 slot and they were just looking for ways to thin out the herd? So I think they only had that 1 slot. So. And I don't know where these guys got their food from. There's no food growing up there on that mountain, where it's freezing all the time. Short summers. Anyway, that's it for now. Ciao.